Hey everyone, it's Marc for Spirit Hive with a quick video on this beautiful Friday, the 30th of October. Trust is the topic of the month, and what I would like to discuss is trust and how to rebuild trust when it goes away, when it gets shattered. This is a topic that often comes up in relationship counseling when people say, "Oh, he or she has done something, and I've lost my trust in him or her." And it happens in other situations as well. Friendships, work relationships, we can lose trust anyway. Now, how do you do that? And this is going to be one of those little how-to videos again, which I kind of like. Trust is one of those things that we generally accept as being there when we start off in a relationship. You know, most people, if we haven't been pre-programmed too much, but most people will be fairly open and willing to trust another person, most of them, when we first interact with people. So trust is generally a given when we engage in a relationship with someone. So when that trust is broken for one reason, that actually goes against some of our natural, shall I call them instincts or whatever you want to call it, but our natural inclinations just to trust people. So what do you do? Because now your trust is broken by this other person, and then what? Well, I think in order to work through that in a healthy way, you need to take care of four things. The first thing you definitely need to care of is forgiving yourself. You know, forgiving yourself, and that sounds a bit odd, but what happens quite often when people get their trust betrayed is that they start putting the guilt trip back on themselves, like, I should have seen that, or did I do something wrong, or why couldn't I see this coming, which actually becomes really negative spiraling thought pattern for ourselves, even though it was the other person who did something, or we think we were to blame or at fault in some way, shape or form, and that's why it happened to us. So the first thing you really want to do is let that go. And there's all sorts of ways you can do that, which I can't discuss today, but the idea would be to start applying some forgiveness to yourself for not seeing this, for being too gullible, for not seeing it coming, for actually getting that trust betrayed and not being able to prevent that from happening. That's what you want to forgive yourself for. That'll be a massive, crucial step in overcoming or working through the trust process. The second thing is, sounds really simple, forgive the other. Why do people break other people's trust? Heck, I don't know. Could be all sorts of reasons. Could be a dumb decision. It could be something premeditated. It could be an impulse thing that they even didn't think about when it happened, and it just happened the way it did. So there can be all sorts of reasons, good, bad, premeditated, accidental, for another person to break your trust. Now, forgiving the other person is not about the other person. It's about you. It's about you. Forgiving another person is always about our own emotional freedom. If we keep walking around laying blame, having grudges or holding grudges, and wanted to seek revenge or to keep making another person responsible, it doesn't matter to the other person, but we're walking around with that massive emotional mental load. So to forgive another person, no matter what way you want to do that, will ultimately free you up to feel better. Now, regardless of what the other person thinks of your attempt to forgive them, it doesn't actually really matter. It's about your personal space. So forgiving yourself first, forgiving the other person, two major crucial steps in the process of working through trust issues. The third thing that I find is really important is trust yourself. It sounds really odd again, but when you get your trust broken or shattered or damaged, we often think is like, well, I now have to look at life differently because obviously I was too gullible to not see that coming, and therefore I now have to be stricter with myself to prevent that from ever happening again. So often what we start to do is become less trusting, more distrustful of ourselves, which again is not a good idea. You know, sometimes things do happen, whether it's accidentally or deliberately, but sometimes we just can't see things coming. And it's okay to, even when you're broken and even when you have been broken badly, to say, look, I can get through this. I don't have to become more suspicious or more distrusting of the world. I can work through this. I have that power to do that. I'm still capable, I'm still able, and I can trust myself to make different decisions next time around. So it doesn't mean that you have to stay with a person who's broken your trust or remain their friend or whatever, or keep working for the company that has broken your trust. No, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means that you can start relying on your own inner powers, your knowledge, your wisdom, your own emotional gauges, your own mental powers to work through that in a way that will ultimately make you come out stronger. So that's a big topic, and I can only discuss it briefly. And the last one, so we got forgiving yourself, forgiving the other, trusting yourself, trust the other. That's the fourth one. Trust the other. Now that's hard. And that's the hard thing that I often come across in my conversations with people when it comes to counseling and broken trust, because people find it really hard to trust again, to reestablish trust. Trust is one of those, like I said in the beginning, it's one of those innate things that when it's broken, you got to rebuild it. And that's not an automatic process. That's something you'll have to put effort in. So to learn to trust the other person again, to learn to trust yourself, to be with that other person again, that'll be a massive exercise. In sessions with clients, I often say to them is like, trust is built on evidence. So for instance, in couples relationships, if one partner has done something that the other partner considers as a breach of trust, then the one partner, the one who broke that trust, will have to show through evidence, through proof, that he or she is still okay to be trusted. Now that will take a while. That's a gradual game where trust ideally over time lifts again in the person whose trust got betrayed by doing the right thing, by making the right decisions, by doing the right stuff. So trust, if it's broken, it will drop back down. From that point forward, it ideally gets built up, but you as the person who had that trust broken ideally also has that mental flexibility, that emotional flexibility to say, okay, there might have been reasons for the other person to breach my trust. I don't have to constantly hold that against him or her. I can allow him or her to, through evidence and through showing goodwill and good faith and through his or her actions, to slowly re-establish a baseline level of trust from which we can start to build on. That doesn't only help the other person, it will absolutely help you. And again, that's what it is always about. How do you get through this? And we're not talking about massive traumatic situations where trust was broken so badly that you have to walk away. And there could be really good reasons to walk away and not trust that person anymore. It's not that you always have to start trusting someone else anymore. But if you're both still willing, for instance, in partners relationship, if you're both still willing to give it a go, if you're both still committed to keeping the relationship together, if there's not anything out there that would make that a stupid idea, as in some sort of dependency relationship, if there are still, and that's what you want to talk to a professional about if you think there is, but if there are still enough reasons for you to want to rebuild that relationship that once was but now seems to be broken, benefit of the doubt is sometimes a good idea, at least in the beginning. You will not trust that person initially, but bit by bit, piece of evidence by piece of evidence, that trust can be rebuilt. Will it ever get to the level that it was initially before it got broken? I don't know. It might not, but if you can live with 75-80%, even though there will always be a speck of doubt in your mind, that stops you from getting to the full 100% that was there initially, maybe that's good enough. I can't answer that question for you. That's something for you to find out. So, quick recap. If trust has been broken, the 4 ways to deal with that are to, first of all, forgive yourself. That's the major part. You did nothing wrong, per se. You don't have to blame yourself for this happening. The second of all is forgive the other person. It's not about the other person. It's about you. Forgiving someone else frees up mental, emotional space in you, so you can start moving on, moving through. Third of all, trust yourself. You have the capability, the ability, you have the strength, you have the power to move on from situations where your trust got betrayed. This is not a mental weakness or an emotional weakness in you. You still have what you have, and you can work with that. And fourth of all, trust the other one if you can. Try and build up that trust back to a level where you can say, okay, I can work with that. There are plenty of cases where I've heard as a counselor where trust got broken pretty badly, and people were able to re-establish that trust because both were very committed. The one was remorseful, still wanted to work on other stuff and keep things going, and actually showed genuine remorse or regret. And then the other partner said, okay, I'll give you that benefit of the doubt. Let's keep going and let's see how far we can get. You got to keep in mind that relationships are the absolute cornerstone of everything we do. I always say we are a herd animal. We need each other. We need that social connection. Sometimes it's good to let go. Sometimes it's also good to hang on for dear life and make things okay again. So that's it. If that's useful, then leave us a comments. If it's not useful, or if you got questions, always feel free to ask us questions. More than happy to chat some stuff underneath in the comments box. And look forward to another video and seeing you somewhere at a live hive somewhere in the future sometime. Go well, enjoy.